Hello, bonjour, 你好，Anya, hola，我是你的 boy CP。Hello，Get that garbage out of here!
What's good everybody, this is CP and welcome back to my NBA Fantasy series. Today I'll be talking about 5 potential shutdown candidates. Basically, these are players whose fantasy stats might significantly drop in the coming months and put your teams at a huge disadvantage during your fantasy playoffs. With that said, I would be very careful about trading for any of the players on this list. And if I had any of these players on my roster, I might consider selling high on them now before their fantasy value depreciates. So without further ado, let's get it. Marc Gasol screwed me over during my fantasy playoffs last season, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm still mad about it. Despite having another decent fantasy regular season, I think Gasol can potentially screw over many more owners again this year. In 2 of the most crucial playoff games where I needed him the most last season, Gasol only averaged around 20 minutes a night and gave me a grand total of 7 points. And I think I lost my playoff matchup by less than 10 points that week. Simply put, the Memphis Grizzlies are pretty brutal again this year, and it seems highly unlikely that they will be competing for a playoff spot. So if they do decide to tank, I expect Gasol's fantasy numbers to significantly decrease in the coming months and disappoint many of his owners during the fantasy playoffs again this year. We all know that the Phoenix Suns aren't going anywhere this year, and at this point it looks like they have a legit shot at landing another high-end prospect at the draft. I'm not gonna lie, adding a player like Zion to a team already with Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton would be very intriguing. In order to give themselves a shot to get Zion, it might make sense for the Suns to cut down on the usage of their best scorer Devin Booker, especially late in the season. If you look at the stats from last year, Booker was pretty much shut down by mid-March and the Suns lost 19 of their final 22 games. They ended up winning the lottery and got a nice consolation prize in Ayton. If history repeats itself again this year, I would be very careful about trading for Booker in any redraft leagues, as he has potential to be a shutdown candidate during your fantasy playoffs. Zach Lavine had an amazing season and is setting new career highs across the board. But much like Devin Booker, he plays on a team that has a legit shot at landing the #1 pick. Lavine has been the Bulls' best offensive player this year, and if you take him out of the lineup, they have an even better chance of losing even more games. Seeing how Chicago tanked last year by playing players like Cameron Payne and Sean Kilpatrick late last season, I could see them doing the same thing again this year. If you look at the Bulls lineup, they have plenty of options at the 2-guard position, so they don't have to play Lavine if they don't want to. Lavine still might offer decent value for the next month or so, but once March hits, I wouldn't be surprised to see his fantasy value take a major hit. Nicola Vukovich is having an amazing fantasy season and has been able to put up top 10 value for his owners so far this year, but there is a huge question mark as to whether he can maintain his strong play the rest of the way. A lot of that will depend on whether he gets traded or not. If he stays in Orlando and they fall out of the playoff race, I could see his numbers and usage rate gradually decline after the All-Star break. The Magic seems to be very high on a young player like Mo Bamba, so they might use the tail end of the season to focus on player development and take away Vooch's minutes down the stretch. Compared to others on this list, Enes Kanter's fantasy value is a little bit harder to forecast, but like other players here, he plays on a bad team, and over the past little while we have seen his role slowly diminish in New York. The likelihood of his fantasy value continuing to go down will be especially high if he stays in New York. I can see the team using the final few months of the season to promote their young players by taking away even more minutes from Kanter. At this point, only a trade will likely save his declining fantasy value, granted that the team that acquires him gives him starting minutes or a high usage rate in their rotation. So that's a look at 5 players who could potentially cost you big time during your fantasy playoffs. Let me know if you agree or disagree with my picks. And if you like this video, please show me some love by liking, sharing, and subscribing. And that's it for today. I'll see everybody next time.